What I hope is in the next 5 years, there's 20 YouTubes. I think that's going to be a huge step in the right direction. And that also gives a company like ours a lot of job security. The more content there is, the more platforms there are, I think the more helpful we'll be as an organization. Hello, I'm Ricky Ray Butler, CEO of BENlabs, and you're on Behind the Brand with Brian Elliott.
Everyone, welcome to another episode. Ricky Ray, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's such an honor, as I mentioned earlier. You've had such amazing guests on this program. I've been watching you for well over 10 years. And so I'm super excited to finally be invited to be on and do this with you. Thank you.
I've been bird dogging you all these years, been watching what you've been doing and very impressed by what you have been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. I remember we were just talking off camera. Last time we saw each other in the flesh was like VidCon 2015 or something.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's about time we caught up and figure out what each other is doing.
Absolutely.
For the sake of this series, I usually ask my guests, how did you get this job?
Yeah. So I'm CEO of BENlabs. Just a quick summary. BENlabs is an AI business that's focused on human behavior and attention. And I started a business called Plaid Social Labs around 15 years ago. And we were one of the first companies in the world to really help creators and influencers collaborate with brands. And we were very focused on doing it at scale and also being very data-driven with predictive analytics.
Mm-hmm. I remember, yeah.
Yeah, you remember that, yeah.
It started about the same time.
Yeah, no, 100%. It was at the bottom of the recession, and it was probably a competitive edge to be able to start from the bottom, and now we're here. And we're able to grow during really rough times. Yeah. And I think that made us learn and become smarter faster.
Yeah.
And so after about 8 years, actually, no, it was 6.5 years of growing that business, I ended up getting acquired by BENlabs. And then 3 years after that, I became CEO of the company.
Very cool.
And as I mentioned, why would an AI business or acquire or, an influencer marketing business? And it's interesting because BENlabs has actually acquired a variety of different entertainment businesses. The biggest company in the world in product placement, Norm Marshall Associates. TubeBuddy, which is the biggest community of creators. It's a SaaS offering where over 15 million creators have opted in to be able to get access to be able to grow their audiences and to do it in a data-driven way, and as well as optimizing video.
I'm a TubeBuddy user.
Oh, are you?
Shout out to TubeBuddy.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting is the reason why we acquired all these different entertainment businesses and these video businesses is because all of them were category leaders, but secondly, had the most data. And if you know anything about AI, it's data that makes it really work. And if you look at like the mainstream AI applications, you look at DALL-E 2, generative imaging, ChatGPT, Midjourney, yeah. They all have one thing in common. Two things in common. One, they're all breakthroughs in media and content and art. But then two, they're all also breakthroughs when it comes to leveraging unstructured data. Unstructured data is the data that doesn't fit in a spreadsheet. It's the data that's outside the spreadsheet. It's the majority of data that's actually out there today. It's 80 to 90% of the data is unstructured, and that's actual imaging. It's large groups of text, it's video, and it's audio. And so we acquired these businesses, and as we saw this new world of decentralized content, we realized, okay, in order to navigate all this content and to organize it and to prioritize it, we're going to have to evolve and become an AI business. And what we've learned is it really gave us a huge competitive advantage when it comes to not just predicting which TV shows are going to be successful or which content creators are going to drive the most ROI, but it's also just been a huge advantage on understanding human behavior and having intelligence around video.
Yeah, I love that. I want to unpack that all the way. But before we do, I want to roll back the chronology a little bit.
Sure.
And I want to talk to, here we are, summer, 2023. We don't need to put a timestamp necessarily on this particular episode, but I feel, and you can chime in here too, we're in a big time of change. And I actually have no idea what's happening, but I feel it in a similar way that I did in like 1999 and even 2001, 2005, 2008. I feel like something big is happening. I feel it in my gut, but I'm not smart enough to have it figured out here yet. So I want to tap that from you. But I know a lot of people right now are making decisions about what they want to do in terms of a career path. So let's talk to them for a second. And this is age agnostic. You might be coming out of school, but you might also be like halfway done and like thinking about a reset because you've just heard about AI and these opportunities. Maybe you were thinking about coding and everyone's like, nope, forget the coding stuff, go into AI. What were you thinking about? What was young Ricky Ray thinking about when he was a kid? Like, how did you get these signals to go to where you were going to go?
Yeah. My entire life, I think there's two paths I wanted to go down. WWE. I wanted to be the Cayenne Man.
Okay.
I wanted to be one of those hardcore wrestlers. Yeah. But I was also really obsessed with art and figuring out how could I make a living with art, whether it's music or other forms of art. And I think the reason why art was such a big deal for me is because it was an area where I could truly self-express. Yeah. In ways that was hard to do with words.
And you worked with the Harmon brothers back in the day, right?
Yeah. We've collaborated on a variety of projects from early on in the early Plaid days with the Aura Brush, as well as with The Chosen. I'm an owner of The Chosen TV series.
Gotcha.
As well as I was a partner for a while at Harmon Brothers.
Yeah. I just know Harmon Brothers from like those classic infomercials or like basically YouTube spots.
Yeah. They killed it at that. That was amazing.
Were they involved with the Will It Blend series at all?
No. Okay. But my cousin was.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. My cousin-in-law, George Wright, he was the CMO of Blendtech. Okay. And he created the Will It Blend series, and it grew the business, I believe, 750% in 1 year.
Oh, what a coincidence. That's like the quintessential case study for...
And Brian and I never talked about this. This is our first time.
I love this. Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Classic. So many lessons to be learned from that series.
Oh, yeah.
So many.
It's like old school YouTube back then. Like they actually, I believe, had more viewership on their actual website videos at the time than they did on actual YouTube. Yeah. And people typically found them by searching on Google. Yeah. Yeah, it was before YouTube was really adopted as a mainstream platform.
Yeah. I mean, so we have clients on our production company side that come to us, and we always know that we're off to a bad start when they say we want a viral video. Ooh. Oh, okay.
That's so 2007, right?
People still want a viral, even if they don't come around and say it.
Yeah. The issue about a viral video is that it's a one-hit wonder. They're never remembered. There's no loyalty. Yeah. Consistency is everything.
Yeah. Blendtech, I'm just thinking maybe we can dissect that a little bit. There's so many components to that will help your video go viral. And one of it, I think, was just this legitimacy of the actual product. Like the product could actually blend up all the stuff that they were putting in it, whether it's like an iPhone. Yeah. Like the first iPhone. People are like, what? You put an iPhone in there? Like, yeah. And just all the other stuff, like little plastic figurines.
Yeah. And it was a very successful series. Yeah. And it was very successful, but it's also one of those organizations where are they today? They really, by default, just stuck with that series, and they never really evolved their content. I think they experienced a lot of what I would call model drift or data fade, where they just kept doing the same thing. As things changed, they just kept doing the same thing, and they got lost. Yeah. In this new ocean of content that we have today.
Yeah. I think about another sort of viral hit that I'm looking at right now on TikTok. And it's this guy. Have you seen it? So he fills all these bottles or containers with stuff, and he rolls it down a very steep staircase. It's marble or stone. Have you seen it at all?
I haven't.
Okay, it's you're in a trance when you're watching it because it's like huge jar of pickles, right? And you're just going, you're seeing it go, ka-zoom, ka-zoom. You're thinking, it's going to break on this one. Then the third one is, and it's just like,
Wow.
Or like a whole.
Do they use the Phantom Cam to do it on slow motion?
It's not slow-mo, it's in real time.
Oh, wow.
But it's the anticipation. So there's like a wine bottle, and then there's a bottle full of marbles, and there's like a bottle full of beads. And it's like the biggest mess that you can imagine, mayonnaise or whatever. And it's just like, how many stairs will it get down before it busts, or will it bust? And I think they've gotten well over 1 million followers on TikTok in just like a matter of months. But to contrast that, like that's eye candy, or that's a flash in the pan kind of thing. What BLENDTECH I thought got right was that was their core product, right? And like it showed the legitimacy of it. But you're right, they got complacent. It was a one-trick pony. They didn't innovate. Maybe they had that data fade and they rested on their laurels, or whatever happened. But so it was your cousin then. It was
He was there for a good amount of years, and he moved on to other projects.
Yeah, and then I think Harmon Brothers, some of these. What's that really crude, like the unicorn? It was like that.
Yeah, the squatty potty. Yeah, we had like
disgusting,
unicorn.
but like super on point.
Yeah, they did amazing work, and some of their stuff would go viral, but where they were very intelligent was being able to figure out how to persuade someone to react to their video.
Yeah.
And to actually purchase something. And when they first started out with like Aura Brush, because they were the founders of Aura Brush, I believe they knew like how much money they'd make with every dollar they spent.
Yeah, like the ROAS and all that. Yeah.
And I believe TrueView was actually inspired by that group from Google. I think Google sent out execs to interview them of what would be an effective ad, and I believe that came out of it.
So you're this kid who's very creative. You want to do art,
self-proclaimed.
It's relatable because I was an athlete, but also artistic. I had the left brain, right brain thing going. And so where did it take you then? Were you getting, what did your parents do? Were you getting like feedback, hey, you should go be an accountant or something? Or
yeah, my parents definitely wanted me to have a consistent job.
Yeah.
They wanted me to be able to pay the bills.
What they know.
My father was a physical therapist.
Okay, PT.
And my mom was an entrepreneur. She would start dance studios whenever we needed extra money. She also had an herb shop that she ran for a while.
Okay.
She's very creative, very supportive with my entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah.
One thing that I just always wanted, I wanted to always enjoy what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to drive impact. And as I saw this new world of media start to really evolve, I thought it was really exciting. I accepted that I was never going to make money playing the bongo drums or the guitar or singing. But I thought it would be very satisfying to be able to empower artists to create art.
When did you get that spark? Like, when did you know? And what was the signal that you knew this is it? This is the direction.
So when it comes to working with creators and like digital artists, I'm very OG. I used to collaborate with early MySpace creators.
Yeah.
And like really early in the Facebook scene. Before YouTube was really around and it had a community. And
so we're talking like 2004.
Yeah, really early on. And basically, where I just finally put the pieces together, because I helped grow a couple of different platforms and applications, and a lot of it was leveraged around community. But where it just got real for me is I was watching YouTube one day, and I noticed all these content creators, these teenagers with zits on their face, uploading videos and getting 10,000 views.
Smosh Brothers.
Getting 100,000 views.
Yeah.
And I just thought, whoa, that's a lot of engagement in those views. And I believe it was either late 2008, early 2009, I started testing what would happen, because I had a lot of experience with working with creators, but on different platforms, but not with a video focus.
Were you like side hustling? What were you doing for them? Like consulting, giving them good advice?
What I was doing is growing other brands. And so one company that I worked at that's no longer may it rest in peace, was BYU.com.
Okay.
I was a Brigham Young student,
Gotcha.
and it stood for Build Your Universe. And we saw what Facebook was doing. We're like, okay, let's become even more specialized, more localized, and let's take them out of business when it comes to the when it comes to the BYU community.
Gotcha.
And we did that, and leveraging people from MySpace and Facebook. At the time, there was 22,000 people using Facebook in the BYU network. We got 19,000 of them to join BYU.com.
Okay.
We were monetizing the hell out of that platform. And that was when I was first starting to work with content creators.
Yeah.
In
About
that
how old were
capacity.
you at the time?
Whew.
Were you still in school?
Yeah, I was still in school.
Okay, so you're side hustling then.
So, yeah, side hustling, but I worked full time throughout all of my university experience. I look back and I really didn't have fun in college. I usually had a part-time job, and I was always starting another business at the same time.
Yeah.
But when YouTube came around, and I noticed that these creators were different and they were much more consistent. It appeared to me like the future of television. And as we started making these little tests of having them talk about brands, we would crash websites. I mean, we would spend $2,000 and make $60,000 within 24 hours. And I knew something was there.
Wait, were you buying media against it, or
No, we just pay them to talk about a product.
Okay.
And there's some times where we got a 50% click-through rate based on the views that they got. You don't see those numbers today.
Okay, so this is like really the beginning of influencer marketing.
Yeah. And so at that time, I
Devin
left.
Supertramp, all these guys.
Oh, it's before Devin Supertramp. But
Really?
yeah, so
Okay.
I knew Devin before he even started his channel. He actually used to edit videos for Plaid in the very early days.
That's awesome.
But we were some of the first partners to some of the oldest creators like the Shaytards or Michael Buckley.
Oh yeah, Jenna Marbles. The names are coming back now.
I remember when Jenna Marbles came out, and she was a phenomenon because she had more viewership than she had subscribers.
Yeah.
And it was like the first time, I think, where a little older of a demographic started watching YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to use the platform.
iJustine came along, and MKBHD.
Oh, yeah. She's OG.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just seen OG, and we've done a lot of work with her back in the day.
Yeah.
Gaming specifically.
It brings me back. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you basically were at the beginning, the crest of the wave of influencer marketing. You saw the opportunities, and then what happened?
First and foremost, as I went to bigger companies and I went to these holding companies, these agencies, I was laughed out of rooms. People thought the content looked like shit. It was way too organic.
Yeah.
And even though that's where the eyeballs were going, it was very hard for a lot of organizations to adopt, like they have today. And I'd say everyone works with creators today. I don't think all of them are very data driven, or they do it at scale, or they have good enough attribution in place to do it. But it's very mainstream today.
Yeah.
But
Was this because you were competing with mainstream? MTV was still a thing. And
Sure.
You had like, these MTV shows.
or commercials.
Okay.
I think digital video wasn't hard to adopt, but working with a third-party content creator that built up their own audience that was all based off of loyalty, that was new. It was different than blogs. It was way more effective than blogs.
Yeah, I was going to say, blogs had their day, and that sort of blossomed into this video content creator. But blogs were the beginning of the influencer marketing, right?
Oh, yeah. But we were looking early on in the early Plaid Social Labs days to see if it made sense for it to have blogs be a part of the offering, because we do that once in a while. And what we found is extremely helpful for SEO. But one mid-sized creator was the equivalent of 500 blog posts.
Sure.
And what we learned was like one mid-sized creator for one of our clients with Gigi Gorgeous, when she first started out, she was more effective when it came to driving revenue or sales to their product than being on the front page of New York Times.
Yeah.
Early on, the data was there. And because you even today, you can't find another form of advertising or marketing that has a higher click-through rate or that has as high of an upfront like conversion rate than you get when working with someone that has built an audience through self-expression, that has this loyalty and is always going to make sure that they're going to be talking about the right type of product to the audience.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend about maybe Joe Rogan's an easy target or an easy example, but I remember back in the day when, and this is actually 2015 VidCon. Remember when the Tonight Show had such a big presence there, and Jimmy Fallon showed up, and it was like, whoa, the Tonight Show's here now. This is real.
We made it.
But the reality is, Jimmy gets what, maybe 10 to 30 million viewers an episode, is it? I don't know. Maybe it's a month. I don't know if they're getting those numbers anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if they're getting those numbers anymore. I mean, they get at least a couple million views on their clips that are on YouTube.
I'm just talking about on TV.
Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
Broadcast. Right. And then you look at someone like Joe, who's got a humongous show, and he's getting hundreds of millions. Or if you look at Jimmy, what Jimmy's doing,
Mr. Beast. Yeah.
But even like if you apples to apples, like a talk show format where you have a guest and the guest comes in and you ask questions. Like what Jimmy does, it totally eclipses anything that's on broadcast.
Yeah. Jimmy and I actually spoke about this on our last podcast together, and basically he gets the equivalent of like the viewership of a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But the difference is when he talks about your brand, it's not going to be through a commercial. It's going to be like a Tim Tebow being on the field and saying, hey, I really like this. Check this out.
Yeah.
And you can't get that sort of placement in the Super Bowl. But so you have Jimmy that's like a one-off that's obviously gets more viewership in a year than the Super Bowl would get. But again, each video is equivalent of the Super Bowl ad. But what's interesting is you now have 10 million videos being uploaded every hour. You have over 300 million content creators. There's so much content now where if an organization really wanted to invest in truly modeling how to drive success with AI and with all these content creators, they could have the equivalent of a Super Bowl ad every week. The inventory exists.
Yeah.
And in China, I think we're going to see a lot of the trends in China happen over here, where there's over 150, I believe, video platforms that are relevant.
Oh, wow.
And some of these content creators in China, like Lipstick Brother and Via, in 15 hours, they get over $1 billion in sales and just selling random products. Lipstick Brother specifically got $1.9 billion in sales. That's more than Spotify does an entire year. And that's one individual talking to his audience.
Yeah.
In 15 hours.
Yeah. Population US is what, 300 something million. Population China, it's at least 5x that. And so you took about population. Let's say on Jimmy for a second, Mr. Beast. Why don't brands, and I've heard him talk about this on video before, why don't brands do more brand integration? I know that he has got his own brands, and it's a lot more profitable for him to do the Beast Burgers or the candy bars or whatever he's going to be doing next.
Yeah.
But if I'm a brand, Super Bowl commercial these days costs what, between 5 and 7 million? Give Jimmy 5 million. I think he even said it out loud on a video one time. He's like, hey, if anyone wants to do the equivalent of a Super Bowl commercial, I could do it for less than it costs to do a Super Bowl, and it would reach 10x more people. And you're right. It's not just the reach and frequency number. It's the loyalty factor. What blows me away is that what are the candy bars called again?
Feastables.
They're Feastables. Okay. So he puts Feastables in every Walmart and 7-Eleven. I think those are his two major distribution.
Now in Target.
Target.
Yes.
And he has his fans. He just says, hey, everyone, the Feastables display looks terrible. If you don't mind, just go and spiff it up for me. And like his people go do it.
Yeah. And they're beating Hershey in 2 different categories.
Yeah.
And they're in the 9 figures within the first year. And it's insane. And that's only one bubble of influence.
Yeah. And he's not even trying. It's a tweet. It's the most passive. Hey, if you don't mind, the end cap is a little sloppy. Go fix it. And then the minions come and they do it all. So it's not just reach and frequency. It's like I don't know how you would measure that. Maybe it's engagement or a loyalty factor, but I can't think of anything else that's comparable for someone that would go out to that length and do it.
Yeah. And I think is something that needs to really incentivize brands to be much more data driven when it comes to content.
Yeah. So why don't you think more do it? Or do you think he's getting a ton of... first?
Brands do it.
Yeah.
But I would say with him, I think there's a lot of people knocking at the door.
Okay.
But you have to remember, if you're going to be working with a Jimmy, the GOAT of YouTube, a lot of it needs to be on his terms.
Right. There's no script, guys.
Yeah.
Don't send him a script.
Yeah. If you have your art director on the set, you have failed already.
Yeah. There's no edits. You don't get revisions.
No. So
no notes.
As we create AI models in driving predictions, whether it's engagement or driving sales, the AI doesn't do it by itself. There's a lot of high touch in entertainment still, and also with creators and influencer marketing. Yeah. We figured out how to automate about 35%, and our goal is in the next 3 years to be at 80%.
What does high touch look like?
It's relationship based.
Yeah.
And there has to be trust.
Yeah.
And so if you want to work with like a Jimmy or work with, let's say, with 100 creators, where you can be very predictive and start modeling how to drive ROI with them, you have to have data-driven systems and processes. And one area when it comes to data-driven system processes that we call the consensus triangle. This is when the brand comes to the table. They know their role in the process. Yeah. They know their purpose. Yeah. They bring the data. They bring the talking points. Yeah. They share the vision of what they want to accomplish. And then a Jimmy takes that and says, okay, I've grown an audience of over 200 million followers. They do it because they like how I communicate with them. This is how I take your vision. This is how I take your talking points and then position it to my audience. And what we've learned, both with top tier creators as well as with micro creators, as well as with Hollywood content and music videos, what we've learned is if the brand and the content creator reach a consensus and they both know their role and they give each other boundaries and they respect those boundaries. Yeah. You get a higher click-through rate, you get higher viewership, but you also get a much higher conversion rate. So if you're trying to drive sales in a Walmart or a Target, you're going to get much more sales if you follow that process. And it might seem very emotional, but the truth is you can't go in and take over programming. The programming is to stay somewhat consistent. And organizations, in order to really build a sales channel, they have to follow these processes.
Yeah, I co-sign that. I used to be a brand manager, be on the brand marketing team at Home Entertainment and Universal. We talked off camera. Mm-hmm. And I remember having those conversations and just feeling like uneasy because the brand was my baby. And at the time of the studios, it was a movie title, right? And it has a quick lifestyle. It comes out theatrically and has a DVD or video on demand launch, and then we've got a budget and we've got to sell it in and sell it through at retail, blah, blah, blah. But I remember thinking, I just can't relinquish control of my baby. But it's exactly what you have to do if you want to work and collaborate with someone creative like that, because really they can do a lot more with it, with their audience than you think you can by, putting more controls on it.
Do you remember the MCNs?
Yeah, of course.
Like Maker, which was acquired by Disney. You had Fullscreen, which was acquired by AT&T.
I was with Fullscreen right out of the gate at first.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, because I thought that was a good idea. And I met George Strombolis.
Great person.
And he's like, hey, you should come over to Fullscreen. I was like, all right, what does that look like? He goes, we'll take good care of you. And so I was with them for a little while. It was a good experience until it wasn't. And then I branched off into other things. But I definitely remember that era.
Yeah, those MCNs, they made a lot of mistakes. They bit off way more than they could chew, first of all, and the amount of creators that they tried to represent. I believe Fullscreen had 100,000 creators they represented.
Well, there was a lot of promise and not a lot of follow-through.
See, that was the issue. But I would also say there's a lack of being data-driven and also having the right data-driven systems and processes when working with content creators. And what would happen is when they do these brand deals, many of these MCNs would have horrific experiences because they wouldn't keep the boundaries between the creators and the brands, and both sides would be very unhappy, and there'd end up being lawsuits. Yeah, and this is even before we invested over $100 million in our AI. Before all of that, just the fact that we followed those principles of the consensus triangle, making sure everyone reaches consensus so everyone's happy with the project, including the audience. The audience will be happy that the brand has empowered the content rather than disturbed it. By following those principles, and those tactics or processes, basically, we were able to keep a very strong relationship. And many of these top content creators, even though they had representation from management companies or MCNs, they'd work with us more directly because it's just a much easier process.
Yeah, you're a better matchmaker.
Yeah. But also just understanding that when it comes to creative, you can't just see it as something where everyone just pours their emotions out. There's data that you need to follow, and there's a process that you must follow as well in order to be very successful. When you're working with these content creators, and now there's over, as we mentioned earlier, there's over 300 million of them. There's over 1,000 Hollywoods, but even more content creators. It's the biggest form of media that exists today. In order to navigate this new ocean, you're going to need technology that learns like a human but scales like a machine. But you also need to respect the artist and their creation process.
Yeah. Let's stay on that for a second. Well, there's never been more content being created. There's never been more content creators, although it still is a pretty small population considering. Even if you look at, and my channel is rather small on YouTube, but channels that have 100,000 subscribers or more, there's not a lot. It's like the delta between I'd call them super tubers. They are in the multi-millions, and those are like the 1% of the 1%. And then there's a delta between those people.
I wouldn't be able to count though. You remember when we first started out, like 2008, like you could count literally on one hand the amount of creators that had more than 1 million followers.
Yeah, it was small.
Outside like the celebrities. And
my question is like now the best time or the worst time to get in the game?
It's the best time. 100%.
So I agree with you, but I'll play the other side of the coin. So for those aspiring creators who are thinking like, oh, I missed the boat, I was born too late, or I procrastinated, I haven't started my YouTube channel about ponies or whatever you're going to start. Why is now the best time?
One thing that we've learned with being better at contextualizing content, as well as being able to be better at contextualizing audience and community, where we leverage, for example, computer vision and try to figure out, okay, how do you break up an audience in audience clusters based on their interests? Because as a world, we've been very focused on demographics and geographics, and that's putting people in a box. And that is not a good way of communicating with people.
It's one way.
Yeah, it's one way. But if you look at Ozzy Osbourne and King Charles, they're the same demographic. They're the same age. They're from the same place. They've both been married twice. And guess what? I'm sure they eat different food. I'm sure they listen to different music. I'm sure they like to communicate differently.
Yeah.
And so what we've learned, if you have 3 people that live on the same street, and there's a purpose in me sharing all this. If you have 3 people that live on the same street, let's say in LA, and let's say they're the same race, they have the same gender, they're the same income, most likely all 3 of them are going to be very different. And one of them is going to have much more in common with someone in Mumbai or London or Iceland than they're going to have with the other 2 people. We're very emotional and different creatures.
Yeah.
And so being able to understand psychographics and be able to do that with social, you have to be able to leverage NLP, natural language processing, computer vision, to be able to create a vector or a connection of, based on who your audience is, what are the other audiences out there that have overlap?
Yeah.
What are the other content creators out there that have overlap where you can like really organize people based on interest? And the reason why I'm saying this is now that these tools are coming to the surface, where we have a lot of AI tools on TubeBuddy with the 15 million creators that use that, as well as we do a lot of tools for brands and enterprise as well. To be able to contextualize the audience really makes it so you can see what's trending around the areas that you're maybe passionate to create around. And also, as I mentioned earlier, the majority of the data out there is unstructured data. And the way to really leverage unstructured data is machine learning. And so I believe this is the time where content creators can be much more data driven. They can be much more analytical and contextualizing both what contents can be successful, as well as whether it's like A/B testing the thumbnail, as well as being able to contextualize who their audience is and what their interests are. Where I think It's going to create much more of a roadmap, taking out a lot of the guesswork of helping people be much more successful. And the more content there is, and the more opportunity there is, the more data there is to really navigate and help you make a good decision.
That's a great answer. So I'll pull a little bit more on that string, which is, and I already think I know the answer. I'd like to hear it from you. So if we're new to this game, if we're getting into the creator game, or if we are rebooting, resetting, or rethinking, should we follow the data first, or should we follow, goes back to, I want to do something I love, right? Problem with that is that term starving artist, it exists for a reason because you might love art, but you may really suck at it. And therefore,
Like myself,
you can't make any art. You can't make any money from it. So I know it depends on what your goal is, but assuming that you're not just making content for kicks and giggles, that you want to maybe turn it into something, should you start with the data, or should you start with the passion, the love, like I'm good at this, or I love this? So the deeper I get into AI and like machine learning, the more and more I believe and I have a theory that as human beings, when we have those good ideas or those passion points that we're like, you know what, I just know if I do this, it's going to be successful. I'm convinced that is following the data. We're consuming data all the time. We're hearing and seeing things. And as I mentioned, the unstructured data is the biggest form of data out there. And when we make predictions on actual driving cells with, okay, we know that these group of gamers are going to end up driving the best results if we're trying to build an audience on TikTok, for example, or if we're trying to drive cells in Target. These are going to be the creators that are going to be the most successful based on all the training that we've done with our AI. Well, the reason, what's interesting about that is, guess what the most important form of data is when you're building a customized algorithm to drive cells? Want to guess? It's the audio. Oh, really?
It's not the average clicks. It's not the average cells. The audio is what makes the biggest difference if something's going to drive impact inside a video or not. In the last 4 years, we've been able to predict 8 out of the top 10 new TV pilots before they come out.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah. So we've been working on this for a while. See, there's so much data out there when it comes to entertainment. Just there's not enough people that are experimenting and inventing. And so guess what the most important data feature is when it comes to predicting those TV pilots?
I have no idea.
It's the synopsis.
Okay.
It's not who the director is. It's not who the producer is. It's not who the actors are, which those all help. You have to have a kind of like a whole system of looking at all the data. So it's the story. It's the idea.
So it's the log line or the synopsis, is what you're saying, is so in text form or in they're playing the trailer?
Text form.
Okay, yeah.
And so think about that. What is that text? That's the idea. Yeah. That's the creativity. And it's also the most important data feature to be able to predict which piece of long form content is going to be the most successful.
Yeah. Do you know the term log line?
No.
Okay, so this is in script writing. When you're writing a script, a screenplay, like the log line is the synopsis, but it's not just the synopsis. It's say it to me in one sentence. And oftentimes in like the show business world, and especially the movie studios, they love comparisons. So like this is Mission Impossible meets Dexter or something. And you go, oh, I know exactly what that is. Or,
yeah.
But that's interesting. So the synopsis. And so, yeah, people are skimming and trying to, yeah. And wow. Okay.
And so, and this is what it comes down to is being able to better understand how to make this content perform. And so like on a YouTube, there's a lot that goes into it. What thumbnail is going to be the most successful? So, you know, we have the thumbnail analyzer at TubeBuddy where we show a heat map where you can see which thumbnail is going to have which attention draw where on the image. And we also give a prediction on which one's going to be the most successful. Yeah. We do the same thing leveraging ChatGPT with showing different options and click-through rates when it comes to titles. So titles and thumbnails actually play a really big role if a video on YouTube is going to be successful or not.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the data. Like you have to look at that. But then, you know, we created a model that we have a patent for. It's called the Bottleneck Encoder Network. I don't know if you're familiar with patents. But,
a little bit.
But we got it approved and completely approved and cleared in 4 months, which that's never happened in my entire career.
Oh, yeah.
With at least patents. But it's a patent that literally makes it so you contextualize what's happening inside the video.
And this is a TubeBuddy proprietary patent.
Oh, we leverage this tool for TubeBuddy as well as for other businesses in BENlabs.
Okay.
But what we do is, I mean, it's a bottleneck encoder network that actually contextualizes what's happening inside the video, what movements, what colors, what editing is happening inside the video. That's going to make the biggest difference outside the video.
Wow.
And that video is gold when it comes to data. And so as we look at tens of thousands of videos or millions of videos, our goal is to make it so these creators can not only predict how many views their videos are going to be getting, but what if they can also predict what's going to be the retention rate? Where's going to be drop off? Where is there going to be engagement increased? Now, we haven't productized this yet, but we've actually already created the models that are very that are very promising, that have a very high accuracy rate. And so it just comes down to, before you make a video live, what if you could put into the AI 4 different videos and analyze which one's going to be the most successful?
Yeah. On the media side, when we've done campaigns, that's what we do. Is we make them dark unless we run media against them and we test them for clients. But yeah, if we could do that for a regular upload, and I'll give you a little testimonial to TubeBuddy. It's been an invaluable tool for me. I still don't have it all figured out, but at least to have some tools to make more intelligent guessing. I have to say too, I still get surprised when I'll run those A/B tests, and the one that I've spent the most time on designing, the thumbnail that is, it performs the worst. And sometimes the simplest one, that what's non-intuitive, is the winner. It's, I guess we go with the results, not with what I think.
So yeah, and you're right, and I think that's another, going back to following the data. It makes a really big difference because we're always going to bring our own personal bias.
Yeah.
And our bias might be different than the collective, might be different than how people are going to respond to a certain image or to a certain piece of content.
Yeah.
But Brian, we're in a really exciting time. We talked about the amount of content. If you really think about it, this is not just the creator economy. This is the era of the artist. This trade has been abused and marginalized for centuries and centuries, for thousands of years, by political systems, by kingdoms, by religion. And for the first time, these artists and these content creators are starting to get tools where they don't just create content or a series on one platform, but where we can empower them to scale on multiple platforms, where they can, spread their self-expression to as many people that are willing to hear it or listen to it. And the reason why this is so beautiful, and this is where I'm convinced that art and the creator economy is going to be the leader in the AI world, for a variety of different reasons, but it's because also there's more data there when it comes to video and actual art. But to me, this is exciting because what do we get from art? Art preserves history. It preserves culture. And as we talked about with the synopsis, as we talked about with audio or with unstructured data, it's a very valuable data that we can learn from and hopefully have a better future with. And so what we're experiencing right now in humanity is we're seeing this level of self-expression that was not possible. And maybe it's going to help us be more unified. Maybe it's going to help us be more inclusive. Like, I'm following a bunch of these different creators. There's this band that does shamanic rock folk from Siberia that they harvest honey. And it's this girl band that just kicks ass. If it wasn't for TikTok or Instagram, I would have never discovered this form of music or who these individuals are, or be able to see a peek inside of their lives. And I think me finding out about this band has made me a little smarter, a little more open and enlightened. And we're now seeing that happen at an all-time high. And so I actually think AI is going to push that forward. It's going to scale up content even more. And this era of the artist, I think, is being very empowered by AI.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the AI side. I think, in my mind, it's going to help creators scale what they're doing, but I think it's also going to help people on the fringe, people who maybe want to go into wrestling or accounting. And maybe it's the nudge that they need or the confidence that they need to maybe bridge the gap between where they feel like their competence or the tools are lacking. And they go, I have an interest in this. The AI can make up the difference. And I can stick a toe in the water and start creating my little masterpiece, either as a side hustle, or maybe it's the confidence for them to jump out and try something that they otherwise couldn't have tried because they didn't have the tools previously, or the barriers to entry were too high. Or I think, again, we're saying the same thing differently, which is there's something big happening that we're just getting just the first little glimpse of. And it's like just the beginning. It's very exciting.
I agree. I think it's one of those things when it comes to artificial intelligence, it takes out the guesswork. It makes it so it's less tedious.
Yeah.
And I'm someone that's not a strong writer. And I've always had an admin team that helped my emails because I'd get bogged into my emails for hours at a time. And I'd read too slow. I'd respond too slowly. And it was a hiccup in my career. And when I realized, you know what? Not just the email, but there's a lot of different things that I really suck at. That's when I started becoming more successful. And I believe you're right, where people are going to start putting their toes in, they're going to start testing. And it's going to make it so people can be much more focused on creative, much more focused on vision, being strategic, rather than actually executional detail.
Yeah. Let's talk about, and this is going to be mainly for me more than anyone else. Let's talk about the numbers, because so my mentor is Seth Godin, and Seth is more like a father to me now after all these years of like crying on his shoulder and asking him for advice. And he always reminds me, he says, Brian, he wrote this book called The Practice. And the whole premise of the practice is don't focus on the result while you're in the practice. Of course, we do things for a result. We have a goal in mind. But if you focus on what place you're going to come in when you're in the starting blocks, of course you want first, but you really need to be focusing on your form. And are you getting your hands up properly? And are you stepping the right way? Not like focusing on the first place or whatever trophy. And so let's talk about that in terms of being a creator. We talked off camera about some of these other channels or creators who they start later than us and they stumble onto something and they're wildly successful into the stratosphere. And I'm still stuck at whatever number that is. Talk to me about the mindset that we ought to have as creators, what we should be measuring, how we should be thinking of our progress. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. One thing I'd say with this next generation of creators, I'm with a company where we work with millions of creators who are SaaS, thousands of creators when it comes to collaborating with them with media projects or brands. They're way more data driven and way more business savvy. And they come to the table with a business plan and they just start testing and experimenting and failing fast so they can get to that success much sooner than later.
Yeah.
Jimmy's one of those, but if you look at like the Jake Pauls or the Logan Pauls or the Liza Koshis, these were people that have been around for a while now, but the earliest wave of creators were their idols, were people that they looked up to. And I would say they became even more intelligent when they started their careers.
Yeah.
The Vine invasion, even when Vine crashed, that ended up being a vertical of creators that ended up being the biggest lifestyle and vlogging creators on YouTube and on TikTok and many others. And we're also seeing a migration from TikTok to YouTube and from YouTube to TikTok.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I think what's happening now is these creators are serious about business and they have grit and they're going to do everything they possibly can, use all the tools that they possibly can to be as successful as possible. And this is something that's not just, I think, a challenge now to the mainstream media or to news, because all these news programs like CNN and Fox News, they're not doing super well. You have these podcasters they're doing the news that are getting higher numbers than these actual networks.
Yeah.
They make billions of dollars a year.
Yeah. And I see like presidential candidates going on Lex Friedman podcast.
Right.
or the All In podcast with those billionaires and whatnot. And that's a change, it's a shift. So you talk about these creators have sort of their business mind together and ducks organized. So what are some of those components that make them so button up? What are they looking at aside from things that I'm looking at too? Are my thumbnails in check? Are my titles in check? Am I looking at the drop-off rate of the video in the first 5 or 10 seconds? What are some of these other success metrics?
I'd say a lot of people that first got into the scene were people that aspired to do acting or aspired to do content creation or film.
Yeah.
I'd say a lot of these creators today, they're aspiring to be billionaires. They want to build empires.
You're right.
And this is the path forward where they feel like they can get there and accelerate the potential of getting there. I think actually Jimmy will be one of the first billionaires that started out as like a native YouTuber or content creator.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot more vision. But if you also think about it, like it's not only mainstream media that maybe feels a little threatened. We saw this early on in the gaming space where, digital networks or publishers or news outlets were very angry with these gamers on Twitch and on YouTube because they're starting to make more money than the reporters and all the other people that are making a business out of this.
Yeah.
And now many of them have organizations that are bigger than the biggest networks that existed at the time. Well, that's now happening across the board. But I think it's also something where it's starting to open the eyes of brands. Let's look at Prime Energy Drink, for example, that's making hundreds of millions a year.
Logan's product, yeah.
I've heard that where you can't buy Prime, you can find it sold for $50 in the black market.
Yeah, so they're arbitraging, yeah.
And there's executives at beverage companies that are noticing that their kids are buying this product or that people are trading these bottles at school. And again, it's only the tip of the iceberg. These content creators know how to monetize their own sphere, but when they can figure out how to scale that up and even go beyond their influence by collaborating with even more creators and even more content, other than just doing the UFC and like the Super Bowl ad, but be able to figure out how do you increase that distribution even more, that's going to make it where these content creators become unstoppable. And I'll give you an example. There's a CPG brand that we just recently worked with. And I'm not going to reveal who they are because they're now putting all their eggs in this basket. But it's a toy company.
Okay. How's that?
And nope, but competed with them. And basically what happened is we helped them take their product and figure out, okay, how can we help this company compete against Fortune 500 companies and be able to beat them, whether it's Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 businesses, because this is a startup. And with this one scenario, we were able to take this brand from fifth in their category at around like a 15% market share to first in their category at a 50% market share within 6 months.
Wow.
So we were able to make it so we contextualized who their audience was on their social, as well as being able to start creating content, contextualizing, okay, what do their audience want and what content's going to sell their product the best. And so we have to find their audience and then also make sure we work with the right content to target them. Long story short, we created a predictive model to drive sales in Walmart as well as on Amazon. And they just exploded in growth. A couple of their competitors worked with top tier creators and agencies. Like they're spending tens of millions or hundreds of millions on media. They were working with huge creators from like a Dude Perfect to like a Mr. Beast and all these different huge creators. But none of them were modeling. They're checking off lists. Let's do a media buy. Let's use this commercial. Let's use this creator or this creator. But as we created a predicted model where they ended up working with several hundred creators in that 6 months, it surpassed all the huge spends that were happening elsewhere. And now a year later, they're still first in their category and still have maintained 50% market share because now they have a data advantage by modeling this. Now, the reason with me saying this, when Feastables and Prime, when they figure out how to truly leverage the power of data, AI, and then working with content creators at scale, it's going to be unstoppable. And I think this is where the next super brands are going to be coming.
Yeah. Yeah. It's working smarter, not harder. So let's go back to the data driven stuff. So how much of that result or that win is, let's say, technical or non-human? If it's a pie, let's cut it into pieces.
Yeah.
And how much would you attribute to that high touch, the human touch?
Yeah. So we call this collaborative AI because you have human experts. And our goal is to make it so one expert that maybe typically works with 300 content creators a month, or let's say Hollywood productions a month, can work with 3,000 a month. And so what we're trying to do is, how do we automate, take out the guesswork so they don't have to worry about the analytics or have to crack numbers or averages, make it all they can focus on is just the outreach and connecting with the content creator, making sure both the brand and the content creator are happy. And so I would say 35% of the process is from the technology.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to predicting views or clicks or actual sales, humans don't need to be involved in that anymore.
Yeah, just run it through the machine.
So basically, the best way to describe it is you got to make sure you have attribution in place so you can actually have a feedback loop and measure like the sales that are happening. And this is something that's not standardized. So you have to create a new system for each organization that you work with, whether they're driving sales online or they're driving sales in retail stores. You got to have an attribution model. For example, with Walmart, use Luminate, which is a Walmart product. You also look at credit card data. You create a system to make sure that you can break through the noise and measure the real results. And so from there,
can we stay on that for 1 second? Because I know a little bit something about media buying, and I know how complicated it is. And attribution is actually a little bit of the bane of my existence, because there's so many variables with a media buy in attribution. Like, for example, I was just getting educated on this from my media buyer, and he was telling me if your website loads slower than a typical website, like maybe it's 5 or 6 seconds, the attribution that's normally there in that window can then just disappear, and it doesn't get the proper attribution. Or if they come through a back channel like Honey or something like that it doesn't get counted. Or sometimes Amazon doesn't play well with Shopify, or et cetera, et cetera. So is attribution a problem for you guys either, like this tracking?
Yeah. So it comes down to, what is the purpose of like the project? Where are you trying to drive sales?
Yeah. The brand wants to know where the sale came from.
Yes.
And so does the creator, because they want credit for it. It's like, hey, I drove that sale. I want the brownie point.
So when we create like a predictive model or like a machine learning algorithm to drive sales, and I'll go into how the data works and all that as well. You have to do it for wherever you're driving that sell. Yeah. So if it's for the own companies, no e-com.
Okay.
There's ways of asking people how they found out about, doing a little buyer survey. Or a pixel or a coupon code.
So you're not having trouble with attribution at all?
Oh, this is the thing. Attribution is one of those things where brands have to invest in it, and it is a problem.
Yeah.
And so it's actually probably 3 months as we're like starting to ramp up projects to drive sales and to increase sales for organizations. It's making sure that we iron out and we test the attribution.
Yeah.
And then also just making sure that we have all of our ducks in a row so we can be as successful as possible, because attribution is so important. And I would say, as I mentioned earlier, it's not standardized. So every brand's going to have to create a custom solution for it.
Yeah, it's the Wild West. It's like I said, it's so frustrating sometimes. But
focus is important. Like, you have to, if you're going to drive sales in Walmart, create content for Walmart. If you're going to drive sales on your store, create content for your store. And make sure you focus. Don't just throw everything out there and have the same messaging. You want to make sure that different channels are getting the high touch evaluation.
100%. And my wife, I'm married. My wife told me this story when she worked in her dad's little marine supply store, that she used to take phone calls. It was a tiny little store in Huntington Beach, and she would have they would have 800 numbers attributed to like TV, newspaper, billboard, whatever. And that was super trackable. I had another experience with attribution lately that was frustrating. It was like finding out that if you give someone a custom code, it's okay, go buy Feastables, go buy Jimmy's candy bar, at Walmart, and if you put in code Ricky, RICKY, you get another 20% off. Do you know how many out of 100, do you know what percentage that have the code and know that they can save 20% actually do it? Do you know what the drop off is?
I don't.
You want to take a guess? So out of 100%.
I know there's always risks that discount sites will also get a bunch of engagement there.
Let's take those out of the equation. It's just like human to actually executing the code. You have an idea? Take a guess. Between 1 and 100. What do you think?
Percentage wise?
Yeah, that they're actually going to put in the code and save themselves money.
I'd guess like 5%.
So the drop off is between 20 and 30%.
Okay.
That even if you could save big dollars, Best Buy, save $300 off your next TV, or get 50% off your Feastable, whatever, that people between 20 and 30, sometimes higher, but 20 and 30% will just not do it. It's human error. Maybe they spell Ricky with R-I-K-Y, or they just forget to do it, or they assume at the checkout counter that's going to happen. And, oh, my discount's already applied. And then they check out and buy it. But like that attribution thing is such, I've just been dealing with it a lot. So it's on my mind.
So it's not just coupon codes. You also need like post-purchase surveys.
Yeah.
You want a whole plethora of, you want a whole system that is where you can catch as much as you can.
But there is human error, right?
Yes.
Yeah, on the user side.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But the truth is, we now have enough unstructured data and enough video data where you can truly model the cells. It comes down to, for example, if I were to describe this WeWork mug, I could probably describe it 16 different ways. You could probably describe it 21 different ways because you're more intelligent than me. Our AI can describe this in 30 million different ways.
Yeah.
It does the exact same thing with video.
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to contextualize the video and what's happening with the video, but you also want to contextualize who's viewing the video. What are their interests? How do they want to be communicated with? But then first and foremost, that attribution is what's going to make it so you have that first party data, where as you work with all these content creators and you model out which ones are going to be the most effective, it's very important that you have that first party data and that attribution. So that model then becomes customized and becomes your model, because you can't ever use the same model twice.
Yeah.
Whether it's like the same brand with like different products, each product needs their own model. But the reason why this is important is as you're able to drive this sales channel and start growing sales, where you start seeing a decreased customer acquisition cost and an increase in scale of quantity. The reason why this is important is because it now becomes a model for your entire marketing. It'll let you know which content you should repurpose.
Yeah.
That was successful, then you should repurpose, because most content creators' viewership, only a percentage of it is actually viewed by their loyalists, by their subscribers. And you want to repurpose it and target the other subscribers. But it also gives you insight on what you should post on your social channels, what you should use for your commercials, whether it's digital or TV. And it really, all of this content from these content creators makes it so you have all this data that makes it so your entire marketing funnel can start being modeled.
Yeah. I'm curious, are you measuring inside out or outside? In other words, are you reverse engineering for brands? It's okay, I'm a brand, and so I'm going to reverse engineer who the creator should be matchmaked with. Or is it like we're working with the creators and then we're going to reverse engineer what brands have the audience that we already appeal? Is it both angles?
So, as many angles as possible. You do as much testing as possible. We have 4 phases. One is the learning phase. So this is where you look at all the data in the CRM, you look what you have in place for attribution, what videos have performed in the past, which creators have performed in the past, and then also contextualizing who the audience is and segmenting them.
Is this for all platforms?
Yeah.
Is it including broadcast or just social platforms?
So we have a beauty product where we drive sales on a weekly basis, also with linear television, with unscripted. You can model. It comes down to the investment and making sure you have good attribution. Yeah. And then you take time to, as I mentioned, learn the data, digest it, take all the data that you have and contextualize as much as you can. And then you start creating. And we first create, before we do TV, before we do all this other stuff, we first start creating with content creators, with influencers, like on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. And then you start figuring out, okay, what's resonating and what's failing. And failure is good when you're modeling, because when you start testing, because it helps you reiterate really quickly on what's going to be more successful.
Right.
And after that, you start modeling. You start figuring out, okay, we know X, Y, and Z is going to be effective. This vertical is going to be effective of content creators, and this type of cluster of audience is going to be the one that resonates the most with the content. And then from there, when you create that model, you then scale. So it's learn, create, model, scale. And then that's when you can truly start pouring the gasoline on the fire and know, okay, if I spend $3, I'm going to make $6.
Yeah.
And
how long does that process usually take?
The learn create process takes between 3 and 4 months.
Yeah.
It can be up to 6 months.
Yeah, because you got to run it through.
And then you start modeling. And once you can start modeling and you start figuring out, okay, what's working, what's not, that it starts becoming much quicker after that, and you can scale up quickly. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Have you heard of Philo?
Yes.
It's an SVOD. It's owned by Viacom and Discovery.
Yeah.
They came to us when they first launched, and they said, hey, we want to take Philo, which was competing with Hulu, and we want you to target men 18 to 24. So we did the learning phase. They didn't have a huge following back then, so we had to do a lot of this from the ground up. We started creating. As we started creating content, we noticed something very interesting. The target audience that they thought they should be talking to wasn't the one resonating with the platform or with the content on the platform.
Yeah.
What we found was that it was families and women 40 plus in the LGBTQIA community that was resonating with the content. And so as we got permission to pivot over, the click-through rate immediately went up 172%. Mm-hmm. Also, the conversion efficiency went up 10x. And so as we shifted over, they ended up changing their entire brand. It also started dictating what type of content they're going to be putting on. Like RuPaul Drag Race ended up being on that platform.
Yeah.
And after 2 years, we were able to increase the conversion efficiency by 20x.
Yeah. That's what I was curious about, whether it was like outside in or inside out. And you're saying it doesn't matter. It's whatever the data says, that's where you should go.
And then from there, you can start creating theories of like, okay, these audience clusters or social neighborhoods are resonating with this type of content. You know what? Maybe we should learn from that content and start posting that type of content to our community.
Yeah. And we can look at comps too of other, like maybe it's Bravo or other people who have had success with that psychographic, that demographic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually really interesting because we've done a lot in gaming, but we've also, not a lot of people know this, when TikTok first started out, they paid to play. They actually paid content creators to make content on their platform, and they actually hired us to help grow their male and gaming category. And we created a model to predict, okay, which Instagram and YouTube creators are going to be successful on TikTok. And it was interesting as we did our first project together and we started training the AI, and we're about to do our second wave of content. The AI spit out this list, and then the brand TikTok said, we want this list. And so we compromised. We're like, okay, let's work with both and let's see which one's the most effective.
Yeah.
Their list ended up being successful, but the AI's list ended up being 2.3x more successful.
Yeah. The data doesn't lie.
Yeah. And so being able to contextualize the video content and the community is something that's impossible for us humans. And on top of that, to be able to navigate the content and like the engagement, if you were to see like 1,000 comments, are you going to be able to tell which ones are fake versus real? You probably don't have the time to if you could.
Yeah.
And so there's fraudulent behavior you have to navigate. You have to better contextualize that engagement and how healthy it is, but also what resonates with them and how can you like make sure that you can take out the guesswork so every month that you're working with the AI becomes much more successful.
So to bring this down from the mountaintops of the top creators, the Logan Pauls and the Jimmy Donaldsons, to smaller creators, what platform's available to them? Is it TubeBuddy? Is it?
There seems to be a trend. So there's definitely TubeBuddy. They should be leveraging these very new, cool AI applications. They should leverage ChatGPT and figure out custom ways of using it for them. Dolly too.
Yeah.
But TubeBuddy, it supports now 25% of all the YouTuber creators. And we've now started making it cross-platform as well to support the other social networks. But taking these types of tools are great. Reading materials, finding creators out there, and maybe even if you need to pay someone some money to get some advice on how they started, that's the way to do it. It's a question I ask a lot. And most creators, they say your content's going to suck. You just got to keep doing it. You got to reiterate. You got to learn from it. You got to optimize. See, we lived in a world where content optimization was maybe minimal. We had 20 years ago, how many TV channels did we have? That was a council of people deciding what we watched. Today, with the billions of people that are binge watching streaming platforms or that are binge watching content creators, there's a lot of people out there. And what we've learned is that there's a lot of opportunity to create content that maybe doesn't exist or could be created even better and see success with it. I recently spoke to a YouTube creator called Hunter TV. He does Call of Duty videos. Call of Duty's been around for a long time. And he's only been doing this for a couple of years. And he's one of the top viewed Call of Duty content creators. Also, earlier this week, I connected with a Minecraft creator that has more than 5 million followers. He's only been doing it for 2 years. Minecraft's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And he was late to the game, but he figured out how to better communicate and how to better create content that resonated with this generation of content or of Minecraft content.
Yeah. Maybe my final question is, I'm curious, in your world, are you collaborating a lot with the platforms? Do they give you time and space? Are they like YouTube sometimes to me seems like just the abyss. There's a lot of good people that are doing good things, but it's like they're very tough to get a hold of, but also it's a big ship that doesn't turn fast. It seems like it's a platform that's been around forever, but they really haven't innovated that much, right? So my first two-part question is, are you working with them to make change? And if so, or if not, but what would you most like to see different on YouTube in particular? It's one of our macro platforms that we plan a lot, but what's wrong with YouTube that could be better?
Yeah, this is the thing. We have a good relationship with the platforms from a data perspective. We're able to communicate with their product teams and give them feedback, and they're able to give us feedback. And the same with TikTok. And then also both TikTok and YouTube, every once in a while, as there's big brands that are trying to work with content, but it's very hard to scale. Even if you have a platform that's supposed to help with that, it's a very hard thing to scale.
Yeah, they haven't figured it out.
Yeah, where they've been able to give us business with some of their brand partners, and so we have a really good relationship with with most of the platforms, and all the platforms that I think are the most relevant right now. The platform that I get the most nervous about is Meta.
Okay.
They seem to change policies quite a bit. Maybe my experience is I was actually at a company before I started Plaid called We're Related, where we grew from 0 to 80 million users on Facebook within just a couple of years. And at the time, I think 1 in 5 Facebook users was using our application.
And they pulled the plug.
Yeah. And they did that to Zynga. They did that to a lot of different third-party applications.
Notorious.
And so they've done different initiatives with content creators, and I hope that they just become much more consistent on just making sure that they give the security to the content creators to make money, because they are starting to pay creators. But I wouldn't say it's modeled out. I wouldn't say that it's very consistent.
Yeah.
But I think it's really exciting that you have Mark Zuckerberg telling Lex Friedman that he's trying to figure out how to get long language models to help creators and brands collaborate. I think that's a step in the right direction. But you have FameBit, you have TikTok, you have all these platforms that have tried creating these creator brand marketplaces, and they just haven't succeeded because people assume that there can be an Amazon for humans, but humans aren't products.
Yeah.
And creators are humans and brands are humans, and having them collaborate with that type of system just hasn't worked. And so you have to have technology that's more proactive and that takes very high touch scenarios and figures out how to make it more turnkey and much more streamlined. And so with YouTube, I think YouTube does a lot of things great. I think they're ahead of the curve when it comes to creator monetization. I think there's ways that can improve, but I would say where I think they're improving now is supporting the top tier creators, but they have got to figure out, and maybe with this new wave of AI technology, they're going to be able to figure out how to make more creators feel even more supported. But this is a problem with all the platforms. I wouldn't say any creator is very happy with their relationship with the platforms.
Right.
And so there is a huge opening of opportunity for a platform to come in and figure out how to have the best customer support for these content creators, which really brings the value of their platform.
Yeah. So how do you react when YouTube, I heard they're going to roll out A/B testing?
Yeah.
That's exciting
for us. Our whole thing is figuring out how we can take something that's working and make it even more simple. And so as they do A/B testing, we'll have tools that help support that.
Yeah. Do you feel like in a way there's, I don't want to say copycat, but like they're adopting something you've already made successful?
It's their platform. As you create as you create product algorithms that you productize to help you with other algorithms, there's always going to be shifts and changes. And we get really excited about them creating tools that's going to help these creators be more data driven. I actually think it helps all boats. How do you say, what's the expression?
Yeah.
All boats rise.
Yeah. The rising tide raises all the boats.
Yeah. Rising tide raises all the boats.
Yeah.
And there's going to be areas that we're going to be investing a lot more on optimizing, like the thumbnail analyzer. I don't think what YouTube's coming out with is going to be exactly what that is. But as they create something, we'll create tools that help those. We get really excited about the platforms creating tools for these creators because it then helps us optimize what we're doing and make sure, okay, we don't need to worry on this anymore. Let's now focus on X, Y, and Z. Yeah,
I'm afraid you probably still need to worry about it because if their A/B testing rollout is anything like their internal editor rollout, it's terrible. It's clunky. It's awful. It doesn't work. I don't think anyone uses it. They're not historically good at creating stuff internally that works.
Yeah, I think most of the resources go to the areas where they have the most streamlined experience of driving revenue.
Yeah.
And right now, content creators obviously contribute to revenue because the more viewership there is, the more they can charge media buys.
Yeah.
And it gives them more inventory to work with.
Yeah.
With us, the reason why we don't feel threatened by the platforms is because we're very platform agnostic.
Yeah.
And so our goal is to help these creators with their journey, not just on YouTube, but across a variety of platforms. And there's not a lot of companies doing that. And in these content creators, they're creating content and they need to figure out how to scale that. And they need to also how to figure out how to contextualize how their audiences are different across the different social networks. And we're really taking the approach where we're helping creators in a way where it's an alternative where we're creator first. We're going to help them be data driven with whatever they want to do, whether it's predicting viewership or driving sales on their own websites.
I'm excited about YouTube TV and seeing, like, when I turn on my smart TV, oh, that's interesting. Now I'm seeing YouTube videos being served up as well as the YouTube TV channels and programming. I thought, oh, someone's probably seeing my video thumbnail right now and maybe clicking on it from the TV. That's cool.
And what I hope is in the next 5 years, there's 20 YouTubes. I think that's going to be a huge step in the right direction. And that also gives a company like ours a lot of job security. The more content there is, the more platforms there are, I think the more helpful we'll be as an organization. I actually didn't share this. What's funny is, you know how I mentioned how AI and the creator economy, they're crashing together. There's this inflection point where I agree with you that something's changing. Goldman Sachs said the creator economy is going to be worth $500 billion by 2027. AI will be worth well more than a trillion by that time. But what's exciting is being able to contextualize video is going to be something where the creator economy, I think, is going to empower a lot of other industries and a lot of other organizations and other parts of the world. We already have energy companies. We have banks. We have security companies. We have governments coming to us and saying, look, we need help contextualizing video. And the AI experts or platforms that we've worked with, they're not what you get at an Amazon or a YouTube. And we've been very lucky to be able to have a very competitive team, but also invent some really good technology. And what's going to be happening is it's not going to be an industry that just amplifies human, expression and makes it so we can become more inclusive of understanding the world around us. But I actually think it's also going to be the gold mine of unstructured data that's going to make it so people on oil rigs can be safe. And they don't have to die on those oil rigs based on video monitoring and contextualizing the environment. There's going to be a lot of areas where it's going to have breakthroughs, whether it's with trafficking or other areas. Being able to contextualize video is going to do a lot for not just the creators and for the artists, but I think for humanity.
We were just sitting back, chopping it up.
My mind is spinning on the possibilities with everything that you're doing. And I think I probably only just have just a tertiary knowledge of probably what's capable.
Everyone's being so negative about AI right now.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you have the Elon Musks. You have, Tristan, that's doing.
Oh, yeah.
What was it called? AI.
But that's his shtick, right? That's how he makes money, is
for sure.
By being doomsday.
Yeah, 100%. But the truth is, there is a lot of negativity. We see that with the creators. We see that with the brands. Like when we showed these predictive analytics in Hollywood, one of the top producers right now in Hollywood was offended, and he's, no, this is not data driven. This is magic. My brain. And the truth is, everything's data driven. Even love, finding someone that you fall in love with, is all data.
Yeah. No, I don't see it that way at all. I'm taken aback when you just said that. I was like, I had a reaction like, no. From a content creation, storytelling perspective, gosh, if I can put into something like Midjourney, and I think Adobe's making it with Firefly, and it can create my B-roll. I need a scene with a man walking down the busy streets of New York. And I didn't have time to fly out to New York to get that B-roll, and I could make it like a Midjourney.
Yeah.
That's like,
it goes so far. Yeah.
Yeah. And then put it in the hands of the big filmmakers with more budget and more capabilities. I mean, it gets so exciting. And then combine that with data, and it's, no. The audience is not going to want the city. They want rural. So you should do that instead. Like, just to have everything come together, where you just have more intelligence. That's good for the little guy and the big guy, all at the same time.
We have a tool coming out where we call this multi-model AI, where basically you add two different inputs. So like a sentence of what you want doing, and then like an image. And so you could say, I'm selling a private island. It will show your picture in front of an island, but it'll give you like 30 different options of which one's the best for you.
Yeah. Incredible.
But that's gonna be table stakes.
Yeah.
I believe that the next wave is going to be around predictability. It's not going to be just generative AI. Generative AI is a buzzword. I think we're going to be less scared of AI in a year from now, but it's going to be all around predictive analytics and being able to predict what's going to happen before it happens. Is this being recorded still?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. I think that's where it's going. And so for the last 10 years, we didn't want to be an AI business. We were forced to be. With all this content decentralization, we were getting drowned, and we could not keep a tab on what was happening. And so we literally had to start investing and creating models and building our own MLOps platform to make it so we could evolve and ride this wave of content. And the only way that we could do it was to have technology that could truly scale what we were best at.
We were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that. Tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man,